Welcome back to Artificial Evidence, where the algorithm knows the secrets we'd rather forget. I'm your host, Owen Carver, and today we're unraveling a mystery that haunted a quiet coastal town for over a decade. The story begins in Waverly Cove, a small town tucked away on the jagged coastline of Maine, with its population hovering just above 10,000. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and secrets rarely stay buried for long, or so they thought. It was the summer of 2008 when 9-year-old Clara Hensley disappeared. Clara, known for her adventurous spirit and gap-toothed grin, had spent the day at the town's annual lobster fest with her parents. The festival was held in the shadow of the iconic Waverly Lighthouse, a towering structure that had guided ships for over a century. By nightfall, when Clara didn't return home, panic set in. Within hours, the entire town mobilized to search for her. Flashlights cut through dense woods, boats scoured the choppy harbor, and volunteers combed the rocky shoreline. But Clara was nowhere to be found. Among the volunteers was Tommy Griggs, a local handyman with a reputation for being dependable but a little peculiar. Tommy lived alone in a small cabin near the lighthouse and was known to spend his evenings sketching the coastal landscape. His eagerness to help with the search effort was noted, but not questioned, at least not at first. As days turned to weeks, the town's hope began to wane. Then came the first twist. A red backpack, identified as Clara's, was discovered at the base of the lighthouse. Inside were a few of her belongings, including a small notebook filled with doodles. Investigators theorized that she might have wandered up to the lighthouse and fallen into the ocean. It seemed plausible, but something about the scene didn't sit right with Clara's parents. Her mother insisted Clara was terrified of heights and would never have gone near the edge willingly. The investigation turned to 3 key suspects. First was the lighthouse keeper, Harold Boone, a gruff man in his 60s who had spent decades maintaining the structure. Harold claimed he hadn't seen Clara that day, but his inconsistent alibi raised eyebrows. Some locals whispered about Harold's temper and his history of arguments with townsfolk. Could he have lashed out at Clara and tried to cover it up? Next was Cynthia Moore, a schoolteacher and frequent volunteer at community events. She had been seen arguing with Clara's parents earlier that week about an unrelated matter. While there was no concrete evidence linking her to the disappearance, her nervous demeanor during questioning drew suspicion. Was Cynthia hiding something, or was she simply overwhelmed by the tragedy? Finally, there was Tommy Griggs. His proximity to the lighthouse and his unusual behavior during the search raised quiet doubts among some. But Tommy had no criminal record and appeared genuinely heartbroken over Clara's disappearance. For years, he was dismissed as an eccentric but harmless figure. The case went cold. Fast forward to 2020. Waverly Cove had long since moved on, though Clara's disappearance remained an open wound for her family. That summer, during renovations at the lighthouse, workers unearthed a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards of the keeper's quarters. Inside was a small collection of items, a faded photo of Clara, a child's bracelet, and a journal. The journal wasn't Clara's, it belonged to Tommy Griggs. Forensic analysis revealed fingerprints matching Tommy's on the items. Suddenly, the town's friendly handyman was thrust into the spotlight. Investigators pieced together a chilling narrative. Tommy had lured Clara to the lighthouse under the guise of showing her secret passageways, a story he'd shared with other local kids in the past. Something had gone horribly wrong, and in a panic, Tommy hid the evidence. But how did Tommy evade suspicion for so long? The answer lay in his involvement with the search. His tireless efforts had deflected attention, and his unassuming persona allowed him to slip under the radar. It wasn't until modern forensic techniques were applied that the truth emerged. Tommy was arrested in the fall of 2020. During his trial, the prosecution presented a damning case, but Tommy maintained his innocence. The jury didn't buy it. He was convicted of kidnapping and manslaughter, bringing a semblance of closure to a town that had been haunted for over a decade. As we close this chapter of Artificial Evidence, we're reminded that the truth has a way of surfacing, even after years of darkness. Waverly Cove may never forget the shadow cast by its iconic lighthouse, but perhaps now the town can begin to heal.